I've recently received something that truly had me speechless. At certain points throughout my life, I've owned a lot of Atari stuff. The 7800 obviously, I've had several 2600s, and two 5200s. I've even had a Jaguar at 3 different points in my life. But there's one Atari console that, despite my interest in, I had never owned. And it wasn't like I didn't have opportunities to own it in the past. It just always seemed that there was something else a little more pressing. Or maybe the price was just a little too far out of my wheelhouse, or maybe something else along those lines. But thanks to OGHUGO of OGHUGO's Retro Modshop and eBay store, I finally have my very first Atari Lynx. And it's no ordinary Lynx. This is a tricked out, rebuilt, YouTuber's dream of an Atari Lynx. So what all was done to this one? Why is it so special? And should you consider picking up a Lynx for yourself? Well, let's tackle all that, and maybe even a little bit more in this video. I had been talking to Hugo for months about getting a modded Lynx from him, and the man left no stone unturned. It seemed like every few days he had a new feature or idea that he was willing to implement for me in this baby. But the truth is, I didn't know what I wanted or how it would turn out. So I left things in his very capable hands. And it turned out to be a smart move. When I received and unboxed this thing, I couldn't help but to feel like I scored myself an Atari Switch of sorts. I had seen other Lynx mods that had a VGA out, but he hooked me up with an HDMI out, a dock, some extras, and all kinds of refurbishments that I didn't even know I wanted or needed. But why have me struggle through explaining it when the man himself can give a better explanation of what he did and what the benefits are? So here is what was done to this Lynx from the man himself.
Okay, so the screen, as you know, was basically replaced with an IPS screen. It's a Chinese IPS screen, but basically there's only a few. There's the Chinese ones, there's the bin one, and then there's the clean screen that RetroSticks provides.
Yep.
The bin one, I think only has a VGA output. The RetroSticks one doesn't have any kind of output. It's just the screen itself. And this Chinese one, it basically has micro HDMI. So it has the capability to have HDMI output through that port.
So beyond the screen and the HDMI, what else did you do to this? Because I know there's a controller port and all kinds of other stuff I see on here.
So
okay.
I went ahead and replaced all the capacitors. So I did that. And there's another thing with the Lynx that basically it has like a weird power circuitry. When the power circuitry stops starts having issues, instead of regulating the voltage that comes in, because normally you would use a 9-volt AC adapter, the voltage will come in as 9 volts, and then the Lynx itself, the power management system, will regulate it down to 5 volts, which is what the Lynx will use.
Okay.
Sometimes that messes up, and instead of regulating it, it'll send the 9 volts straight to the CPU and so the chips and the memory chips. And what will happen is that they'll basically either mess up, burn out your memory or burn out the chips. I basically replaced the Zener diode. I replaced the inverter. I replaced that as well. And then some of those was SMD components, so you have to use hot air to get it off and then put the new one on there.
Yeah, that sounds like an incredible amount of work. Hot air state, so you can't do all this with just a soldering iron and good intentions. In the members only video I put out, that I have an Atari Switch now, because there's you provided a docking station, and there's a switch in the back here. Where is it? Right here, that changes the output. So was that included with the screen?
Yeah. So you know what? Unfortunately, the Chinese screen, it's kind of weird because it basically it will cut out the screen itself that's on the Lynx.
Yeah.
Whenever you connect the HDMI port, but it doesn't cut out the sound. Right. So when you have the Lynx playing, it will have the screen off, but the sound will still be playing from the system itself. So what I did is I put in a like cutoff switch in the back, so it'll shut off the speaker from the Lynx, and then you can just hear the audio from the TV or your monitor or whatever you're using.
Now, this controller port on the back, to me, when I see that, I think, oh, that's a 2600, 7800 port. Is that actually using Genesis output, pinout?
Remember how we were talking about that I could either use a Blue Retro adapter,
Right.
which
Yep.
would have given you wireless connectivity to it, and you
Yep.
basically you would just need that one button in the back to just push the button to make it sync.
Yeah.
But the Blue Retro is limited to the Bluetooth controllers you can use with it. You decided to just go with the hardwire stuff. So
Yep.
I basically took DV9 connector, which is like the Atari, Sega style connector,
Yep.
and I wired it up to all the pins that go to the buttons in the front and the D-pad. Also loaded connected the I think it's the pause button and also option 2 to the middle
Yep.
buttons. The Genesis one should work, or the Sega Master System controller
Yep.
should work as well, but I have not tried them. So, because I
Right.
know the Genesis one has like it is compatible with the Atari, so
Right.
most likely
Yep.
it will be compatible with this as well. I just never tried it. When you hold option 2 and the two buttons like A and B, it'll give you access to the on-screen display for the HDMI connector. So you
Wow.
can add scan lines, you can add like stretch out the image, or you can change the colors on the image as well.
So this is very much a streamer/YouTuber's Lynx. The new screen is nice for when I want to lay in bed and get some gameplay in. But for the most part, I'm going to have this next to the television so I can capture gameplay from it. But not everything in this Lynx is strictly for capturing gameplay and making it more convenient to do so. Some of the improvements he made, well, it turns out to be very necessary, as these old game consoles have components and capacitors in them that are nearing end of life, or have been failing, possibly without their owners even noticing. As Hugo goes on to explain, getting your Lynx refurbished isn't just something you want to do to show off or improve your experience. It might be necessary to keep it working for a long time to come.
Okay, yeah. So basically, what I did is like we were talking about the capacitors.
Yeah.
The capacitors, these systems are like going up there in age, 20, 25 years. So capacitors only will last you about maybe 12 to 14 years. After that, they're going to start either leaking. And if
Oh,
they
wow.
start leaking, they're going to basically destroy your board get all your traces corroded. Or they're going to basically dry out. And if
Oh,
they
wow.
start drying out, the capacitors is going to, start failing.
Right.
And you'll have like, audio issues. Like sometimes you go turn it on and you won't be able to hear that well, or the screen is going to be washed out. And that's basically the capacitors.
And as Hugo told me, it's not just Lynx handhelds that you should be concerned with. Almost all older consoles are going to need some work at some point, no matter how well you care for them. Much like us and everything else in the world, eventually these things are going to get old and fail from the inside out. So you might want to consider having somebody with proper refurbishment skills take a look at your consoles. Or maybe even consider learning to do this stuff yourself, so these things can be saved and preserved well into the future. They might become relics one day, but video games were a part of our society, and what we have done for leisure for a very long time. It'll be worth something to preserve them, if only to show what us primitive people did with our technology for fun. I have full confidence in OGHUGO and his Modshop for keeping my consoles and controllers working well into the future, and I recommend you reach out to him to get your own consoles in tip-top shape, or just find another qualified person that you trust to help preserve your collection and consoles. I'll have links to Hugo's website and eBay store in case you want to see what he has to offer, but he gets the Atari Network seal of approval for his work on this Lynx. And outside of finally having an Atari Lynx, I can now review and cover Lynx games for the first time ever here at the Atari Network. And boy, there are some gems on this thing that's worth checking out for Atari fans and retro gaming enthusiasts. There's an awesome version of Ninja Gaiden 3 that I'm very happy to have picked up. You can also grab ports of Hard Drivin', Basket Brawl, Scrapyard Dog, APB, Chips Challenge, California Games, and a ton more. I remember the Lynx being kind of a big deal back in the day, as it was a full-color handheld going head-to-head with the Game Boy, and magazines, or at least the ones I read, seemed to be in love with this thing. I always thought there was more games for it, but ultimately only 71 official releases. But again, there was heavy hitters such as Batman Returns, Paperboy, Double Dragon, and Desert Strike. So again, to somebody like me, this library screamed quality unlike anything we had seen in an Atari console, well, since the 2600. But of course, there is so much more going on today. It's almost a must that retro Atari consoles have an active homebrew scene, and the Lynx is no exception. I'm stoked to finally get to play some awesome looking games like Wyvern Tales, a JRPG not unlike the NES and SNES Final Fantasy games. There's also Odin Nexus that I had mentioned in a previous video, and I will be grabbing that just as soon as it leaves pre-order status on Atari Age. Zaku is something that is, well, no longer available, but is an earlier game released by Ricky and Vicky developer PenguinNet. So, you bet I'm gonna track a copy down however I can. I haven't talked to Osman in a while. Maybe I should see what he's doing. Anyway, I'm also gonna check out 8-Bit Slicks, Unseen, and Loops to round out just some of the homebrews I'm excited to get my hands on. I'll also grab a Lynx game drive at some point too. I've been picking up game drives for all my Atari consoles lately, or Atari Max in the case of the 5200, and it just makes sense to save all my actual cartridges from wear and tear and just leave a flash cart inserted into the console. And the game drive for it seems to be readily available, which is nice. Waiting for the 7800 game drive wasn't fun, and I even had to struggle slightly for the Jaguar version. But with the game drive, it's easier than ever to experience the retail library off real hardware. But you might be asking yourself, well, if you're going to use a game drive, why not just emulate? Why do all this to get a console to record video off of, when anybody can download a ROM set, use an emulator, and get the same thing? And to that, I say, well, it's not technically the same thing. People who look at my reviews are collectors, game fans, people looking back at the good old days, and just those who are generally curious. I want to give a review of the authentic experience, so I can point out the things that you might want to know, or that you've long forgotten. There's something about playing the actual games, and seeing the actual output of those games, that makes it all the more special to some people, myself included. I want this channel to be partially about authenticity. Right or wrong, good or bad, what you see, that's what you get. Gameplay straight from a 7800, 2600 Plus, Jaguar, 5200, 2600 Junior, and now a Lynx. You get mentions of the real controllers and how they control, the actual cartridges, and the funny or interesting experiences that we've all had with these things over the years. I'm glad to have this Lynx in my possession, and I can't thank OGHUGO enough for doing this work. It looks incredible, it feels well put together, and I have no doubt that it will serve the channel well for many years to come. Again, if you have some consoles you want modded, or if you want to pick up some controllers or maybe even buy a refurbished console, then check out OGHUGO's Retro Modshop and eBay store. This video isn't sponsored by Hugo, and he had no idea what the script was going to say when I interviewed him, but he's done right by me, and I think he could do something for you if you have similar interests. But that's enough about me talking about my new Lynx. You guys probably don't want to hear me brag. And that's why I want to hear about your thoughts on the Lynx. Have you ever owned one? Do you have one now? What are the best games for it, and what should I pick up as soon as possible? And do you have any refurbished or modded consoles? Let me know about all this stuff, and so much more down in the comments below. And please, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you haven't yet. I put out 2 videos a week, so hit the bell icon to be notified whenever I upload. And please, consider becoming a Patreon or YouTube member. I have a new Patreon tier if you want to have something specific reviewed. You can even sign up for it just for 1 month, make a request, and then cancel the following month, and I'll honor your request. But limitations apply, so see Patreon for details, or get the basic tier for $5 a month off Patreon or YouTube memberships for access to exclusive content. It helps the channel a ton, so we can continue to get new hardware and stuff to cover. So thank you to My Own Celestial, OGHUGO, Head Trauma Bob, Jolt 7800, Ball Gobbler, Socrates 63, Fens the Spook, Mr. Shua TV, Jeremiah Thomas, and Huge Ass 79. Without your support, well, this video would have never happened. Okay guys, that's enough for now. Look forward to some Lynx reviews very soon, along with some more Lynx related content right here on the Atari Network. Until then, I've been the 7800 Pro Gamer, and I want to remind you all to stay classy, Atarians.